HOA Karen smashed my disabled daughter's walker, not realizing I'm a senior DOJ investigator. Part 1, you never forget the sound. Metal doesn't scream when it's broken, it cracks. Sharp, sudden, final. And when it's the metal your daughter leans on to move through the world, her walker, her legs, her independence, that sound slices deeper than any insult, any punch, any law I've ever had to enforce. Because this wasn't just vandalism, it was a message. And Karen made sure I got it loud and clear. She just didn't know who she was sending it to. My name is Vincent Hale. I'm a senior investigator for the Civil Rights Division at the U.S. Department of Justice. That means I've spent the last 15 years uncovering hate crimes, systemic discrimination, and abuse of civil liberties in every form. School boards, police departments, corporate HR policies, even prison facilities. I've sat across from white supremacists in cold interrogation rooms and watched them squirm. When I quoted the law they thought wouldn't apply to people like me. But I never thought the worst abuse I'd face would come from my own front lawn. We moved to Brookridge Heights 3 months ago. Quiet cul-de-sac, big oaks, clean sidewalks. No crime to speak of. The kind of place where the welcome packets are laminated and the neighbors smile a little too hard at the 4th of July block party. It was for my daughter, Anya. She's 11, bright as hell. Loves outer space and grilled cheese and the saxophone, despite her coordination issues. Anya has mild cerebral palsy, and she walks with the help of a custom titanium frame walker. It's purple with rubber grips she picked out herself, and glow-in-the-dark tape she added. Because if the stars can shine at night, so can I. It's not just a walker, it's part of her. And last Friday, Karen smashed it. It was the day after we put up the inclusive play zone sign. Anya's idea. We had chalk games in the driveway, low sensory spinners, even a water table with modified height. Nothing flashy, but apparently too much for Karen Wellington, the self-appointed HOA Visual Quality Coordinator. She wasn't elected, no official title, no credentials, just a clipboard, a sour stare, and the kind of audacity only bureaucracy's shadows can breed. She'd sent us 3 notices before the attack. Driveway clutter exceeds aesthetic code. Bright markers constitute unauthorized public signage. Mobility devices must not be stored in visible areas. Each signed HOA visual oversight. Each printed on her own damn home printer. I reported her to the actual HOA president. His response, she's harmless, just passionate. Try to keep the peace. They didn't know who I was because I hadn't told them. Because I wanted to live here as a dad, not as a federal badge. But when Karen raised that rake and drove it down onto the frame of Anya's walker, twisting it into a broken mess on the pavement, I stopped being a neighbor and became the storm she never saw coming. It happened on a Saturday morning. Anya was sitting on the porch swing reading A Wrinkle in Time. Her walker was next to her on the path like always. Wheels locked, neatly parked. I was inside grabbing lemonade. And in that window of seconds, Karen strutted up our driveway with her fake badge muttering about unsanctioned visual obstructions. And before Anya could say anything, crack, the rake hit. Again and again. Until the purple frame bent inward. One wheel snapped sideways and Anya screamed, "I dropped the pitcher." Ran out the door. Karen backed up, holding the rake like it had a life of its own. This was abandoned. It was blocking my route. My dogs could trip. I cut her off. "You just destroyed federal medical equipment." She blinked. "It's a walker, not a defibrillator." "Don't be dramatic." I stepped between her and Anya, took out my wallet, opened the leather flap, flashed my DOJ badge. "Ma'am, I'm a senior civil rights investigator for the United States Department of Justice. What you just did qualifies as a hate-based property crime under Section 242 of Title 18, U.S. Code." Her face paled, but I wasn't done. "You targeted a child with a disability. You damaged her assistive device. You did so under a false claim of authority." I turned to my daughter. Her hands were trembling. Her book lay in the dirt. Her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did she do that, Dad?" Karen turned to leave, but I raised my voice. "You walk away now, but this doesn't disappear." Not this time. I spent the rest of the afternoon documenting everything: photos of the smash walker, video from my doorbell cam showing the attack, 3 eyewitness statements from neighbors, the compliance notices Karen had left us in the past, her fake badge and clipboard she dropped in her rush to leave. Then I did what I was trained to do. I built a case. That night, I filed 3 reports simultaneously: DOJ Office of Civil Rights Violation Referral, FBI Local Civil Harassment Complaint, California Department of Fair Housing and Disability Rights Abuse Notification. By Monday morning, I was on a call with the Assistant U.S. Attorney assigned to our district. By Tuesday, the HOA was subpoenaed for all correspondence from Karen Wellington. And by Wednesday, Karen's illusion of control shattered harder than the walker she destroyed. Part 2. Karen thought she could vanish. That if she skipped HOA meetings, deleted a few emails, and told people I was blowing it out of proportion, it would all go away. But real law doesn't evaporate under silence. It sinks in. And this time, the neighborhood was watching. By Friday, federal investigators contacted 3 other families on my block. Families who had previously filed anonymous concerns to the HOA board about Karen, but had never pushed further. Their stories mirrored ours in painful detail. A mother whose son with autism was told to keep his flapping inside. A grandfather whose Parkinson's caused hand tremors only to be filmed and reported by Karen for disturbing porch behavior. A single father whose daughter used a walker similar to Anya's until Karen accused her of damaging sidewalks and got the HOA to demand a $100 repair donation. None of them had fought back until now. Camille and Trina, neighbors I barely knew before the incident, stepped forward first. She used to show up with that clipboard and say she was on the Home Harmony Task Force. I thought it was real. I let her remove our rainbow flag from the fence because I didn't want trouble. Same here, Trina said. She called my kid's mobility scooter visually abrasive. I didn't know what to say. I thought maybe I was being too sensitive. I showed them my file, the legal codes, the violations, the constitutional protections, and then I showed them the photo of Anya's destroyed walker. Camille cried. Not anymore, she whispered. We're not staying quiet anymore. By Sunday, I had statements from 9 households, all within our subdivision, all involving Karen. Some went back 2 years. One woman, an Iraq veteran in a wheelchair, had received a violation notice for vehicular display on front lawn. She'd parked her chair there to reach her mailbox. Karen had circled it in red ink. Excessive visibility, negative aesthetic footprint. I forwarded that one directly to the U.S. Attorney's Office. They called it damning. The story hit local media the following week. DOJ investigator confronts fake HOA harassment, targeting disabled residents. Walker smashed in front of child. DOJ and FBI respond. Woman accused of faking authority to police the vulnerable in Brookridge Heights. The articles went viral. The doorbell video of Karen smashing Anya's walker aired on 3 news stations. Karen's face, screaming, contorted, holding a rake like a scepter, was on every screen. But no one felt sorry for her. Because in every interview, I didn't focus on revenge, I focused on truth. This isn't about one act of cruelty, I told a reporter from Channel 8. It's about what happens when someone invents power and uses it to erase the people they don't want to see. This is ableism in action, and silence has kept it breathing for too long. The city responded fast. The Brookridge Heights HOA issued a public apology to all families impacted by Karen's false role. Then they went further. They invalidated over 140 notices she had issued in the past 18 months. They banned any non-elected resident from distributing enforcement material without prior board approval. They created a new subcommittee, Community Equity and Accessibility Board. Guess who they invited to chair it? Me. I hesitated for years. I'd fought these battles in courts behind closed doors under fluorescent lights. Did I really want to take it to my own street? But when I saw Anya walk for the first time with her new walker, deep red carbon frame, smooth handles, wheels that glided like her smile, I knew the answer. Yes, our first act as a board, we held a truth forum in the park. No microphones, just a circle of chairs. Everyone was welcome. People showed up, dozens, with their stories, their fear, their memories. One by one they spoke. She made me feel like my ramp was shameful. I covered my son's walker with a tarp so she'd stop tagging it. I thought I was just being oversensitive, but now I know. She wanted us to feel that way. By the end, the air was different, not lighter but clearer. The following week, Karen was formally charged by the district attorney's office. Destruction of federally protected mobility equipment, harassment of a disabled minor, impersonation of municipal authority, violation of ADA Title II and California fair housing laws. She pled not guilty, but the case was airtight, the evidence irrefutable, and the community unforgiving. I was subpoenaed to testify. So was Anya. I asked her if she was scared. She shook her head. No, she said, I just want people to hear the truth. She looked me in the eye like you do at work. That's when I realized this wasn't my fight anymore. It was ours. The trial was set for 4 weeks out, and in that time we didn't wait. We built. We launched a neighborhood accessibility initiative. We updated zoning rules for mobility access. We repainted all curb cuts. We distributed a guide called Not a Nuisance, a resident's guide to seeing the people. We overlook. Anya helped design the logo, a pair of walkers side by side under a tree. We posted it at every mailbox. Karen used to post her notices there too, but now she was the one being noticed. Part 3, the courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back wall. Neighbors filled every bench. At least 3 parents held children on their laps, quiet but watching, absorbing what justice looked like when it wasn't filtered through whisper networks or HOA newsletters. Karen sat at the defense table in a conservative gray suit, her hands folded on top of a legal pad she never once wrote on. She looked smaller than usual, not physically, spiritually, but her eyes still defiant, still scanning the room like we owed her something. The prosecutor opened calmly. This case is not about a neighborhood dispute. It is about a pattern of targeted intimidation and the destruction of federally protected equipment used by a disabled child. He gestured to the screen. Security footage appeared high definition, no sound needed. Karen walking up the driveway, Karen raising a rake, Karen striking the walker, Karen backing up as a child screams. There were gasps in the room. Even the bailiff's jaw clenched. Karen's defense, she was confused, believed the equipment was abandoned, thought she was authorized to act. But that narrative died the moment the prosecutor brought out the flyers, over 100 of them, each stamped with her self-made visual oversight committee insignia. None legally sanctioned, none filed with the city, none approved by the HOA. Just paper shields for real harm. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand with calm I had earned. I took the oath, sat and faced Karen. My name is Vincent Hale. I said I am a senior investigator with the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. Murmurs rippled. But more importantly, I am a father. My daughter's name is Anya. She is 11 years old and she uses a mobility aid. What happened on that morning was not a misunderstanding. It was targeted, it was violent, and it was deliberate. I lifted a copy of the smashed walker photo. This isn't about a piece of metal. It's about the intent behind crushing it. It's about telling a child she doesn't belong in her own driveway. I paused. The defendant did not destroy clutter. She destroyed dignity, and we're here to make sure that dignity is restored. Then it was Anya's turn. She rolled up to the stand in her red walker, chin high. Everyone stood without being asked. She was calm, stronger than most adults I'd seen testify in court. When the prosecutor asked her what she remembered, she said, I remember she didn't look at me. She looked at my walker like it was trash, like I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't loud. I wasn't in her way. I was just there. But she hated that. And then when asked what she wanted from the court, I don't want her to say, sorry. I want other kids to know they can have sidewalks too, and that walkers belong on driveways. Silence followed, heavy, unbreakable. Karen didn't testify. Her lawyer knew better. The only thing she offered was a letter read aloud by her attorney. I regret the pain caused. I never intended to hurt a child. I misunderstood my role in the community, but it didn't land because the courtroom didn't need a statement. It had seen the video. It had heard the silence after the strike. It had watched an 11-year-old rise from trauma and speak without rage. That's something no lawyer can out-argue. The jury returned the verdict in under 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: destruction of medical mobility equipment, harassment of a disabled minor, impersonation of a government official, violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Karen sentenced 18 months county jail, $35,000 restitution, including full replacement of Anya's walker and community fund donations, permanent ban from serving in any HOA or neighborhood authority position in California, mandatory enrollment in a state disability rights education course, and public apology at community hearing. But none of that was the real victory. The real victory came outside. After the sentencing, a crowd gathered around Anya, kids she'd never met before, one in leg braces, one with a speech device. One boy just whispered, "Thank you," and handed her a sticker that read, "I belong here." She stuck it to her walker without hesitation. Camille hugged us both. Trina wiped her eyes. Bob, the retired Marine, handed Anya a coin from his old unit and said, "You earned this more than most I've served with." That night our driveway was full. Not with chalk warnings or fake notices, with people with food. Laughter music, the HOA president officially unveiled the new community initiative. Operation Seen and Equal and Accessibility Fund. A redesign of all neighborhood infrastructure. A code review. And one new rule. No enforcement action may be taken without ADA compliance training. Anya got to cut the ribbon. And when she did, someone shouted, to the girl with the walker who made a whole city walk straighter, Karen's name faded. Her flyers, once stapled to every mailbox, were burned in a bonfire hosted by the PTA with marshmallows, of course. Her rake still bent, still silent, still hanging in our garage, not as a trophy, but as a warning that silence is a tool. But so is Resistance Part 4. The day after Karen was sentenced, the sidewalk felt different beneath our feet. Not because the cracks had vanished, but because no one had to tiptoe around them anymore. That's the thing about power. It's not in titles or clipboards. It's in who gets to move freely, who gets to be seen without flinching, who walks down the middle of the street without whispering, "Is this allowed?" Karen had built her kingdom on silence, but now we made noise. The neighborhood didn't just recover, it transformed. The HOA, once passive and slow-moving, became a model for responsive governance. Every member was required to take civil rights training. We implemented the Ellie and Anya inclusion protocol, named after my daughter and Camille's autistic niece. Every new policy, from pool rules to parking permits, had to pass through three lenses. Is it accessible? Is it equitable? Is it necessary? Karen's Visual Standards Program, replaced by the Visible and Valid Task Force, run by residents with disabilities and their allies. Anya was elected honorary chair. She was 12 now, taller, more self-assured, and that fall she gave a speech at City Hall during a youth leadership event. Standing beside her red walker, she said, "When someone smashed my walker, they didn't just break metal. They tried to break the part of me that says I belong, but it didn't work. Because now I know my walker isn't weakness. It's proof I move through a world that's not always ready for me, and I still keep going." Applause echoed through the chamber. But it wasn't the clapping that stayed with me. It was the faces, kids who had stayed quiet, mothers who had doubted their instincts, men who once ignored injustice, now nodding with something that looked a lot like shame turned into resolve. In the weeks that followed, the story spread beyond Brookridge Heights. NPR ran a segment titled "From Broken Walkers to National Policy: How a Child Sparked Reform." The DOJ invited me to help draft new federal guidelines for disability-based neighborhood harassment. We named the statute the Anya Provision, and under it, municipalities across the country were now required to validate and register all enforcement personnel, train HOA members in ADA compliance, create anonymous reporting channels for vulnerable residents, and offer restorative hearings in neighborhoods where rights had been historically trampled. Karen's name appeared only once more in a footnote, a case reference, a cautionary tale. Meanwhile, we built something better. A week after the sentencing, the community gathered to paint a mural across the sidewalk where Anya's walker had been smashed. Kids came with brushes, adults brought paint. Some brought lawn chairs and memories they were ready to release. In bold blues and radiant oranges, we painted silhouettes of walkers, scooters, and strollers dancing between trees. At the center, in Anya's handwriting, "Nothing broken here. Just becoming one evening." Anya asked me, "Do you think she's sorry?" Now I thought for a long time, then said, "I think she's quieter." And sometimes silence is the first step. "Do you forgive her?" That one was harder. So I told her the truth. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, baby. It's deciding not to let someone else hold your story forever. She nodded, then added, "She doesn't get to write it anyway, I do." And she has. Anya now writes a blog called Steps in Color. She interviews other kids with disabilities, shares stories, makes space. Her tagline: "You don't need to walk like them, just keep moving." The walker she uses now is different, taller, faster, lighter. But she keeps the first wheel from the one Karen broke, mounted in a shadow box above her desk. Not as a reminder of pain, as proof of what we rebuilt. Every year since the neighborhood hosts the Walk of Honor, a parade of mobility. No floats, no perfection, just walkers, canes, scooters, prosthetics, braces, moving through the streets that once tried to shame them. We hang banners, not a disruption, a direction. We're not the ones who should move aside. Power doesn't mean permission. Anya leads the front. Camille's niece carries the flag. Bob walks beside them with his old army medals and a smile that says, "This is the America I fought for." And Karen. We haven't heard from her since her probation ended. But I'd like to think she learned something. That control is not order. That neatness is not kindness. That community cannot be built on silence, only recognition. People sometimes ask me if I miss anonymity. If I miss being just a neighbor instead of the guy who sued the fake HOA queen. I tell them this: I didn't bring my badge to this street. Karen did. I just brought the truth, and now I get to raise my daughter in a place where she walks outside and nobody flinches, where her wheels aren't warnings, but welcomes, where she isn't stared at like a problem to fix, but admired like a story we're lucky to be part of. The friend. The end.